Good afternoon, and welcome to the April 2016 edition of the Sustainable Materials Management Web Academy. We are happy to have you participating. This 90-minute webinar is hosted by the Environmental Protection Agency to provide training and networking opportunities to state and local governments, non-governmental organizations, and other stakeholders interested in sustainable food management. As George mentioned, today's topic is the newly released nationwide public service campaign to reduce food waste. And our speakers are Cece Weedle from the Ad Council and Dana Gunders from the Natural Resources Defense Council. Households make up a significant portion of the food waste across the country. Preventing that waste from occurring in the first place is one of the most cost-effective ways to address wasting food. But how do we change people's behaviors around food? The Natural Resources Defense Council has teamed up with the Ad Council, the public service advertising agency that brought you Smokey the Bear and the Friends Don't Let Friends Drive Drunk, to launch a nationwide public service campaign to reduce food waste. After over a year of research and development, the campaign was launched last week. This webinar will share their campaign and will highlight what materials will be made available to cities, retailers, and other entities interested in participating in the campaign. Please note our disclaimer slide. Before we jump into the presentation, as we prepare for the webinar today, we would like to take a quick polling question. George, can you please bring that up? Please respond to the poll identifying the sector that your work most closely aligns with. We are only able to offer 5 options, so we tried to identify our best guess based on our previous audiences. Traditionally, our audience is dominated by the public sector, so let's see who's joined us today.
Give it a few minutes. All right, I'm closing the poll.
Thank you.
And let me share.
Oh, other. So we have a third of you are other, so that's interesting. So please give us a little more information at the end of today's webinar when we ask a survey. I'd like to know who's on the line. So thank you for participating. We will now move into today's webinar with an introduction. Our Food is Too Good to Waste by my EPA Region 10 colleague Ashley Zanoli, followed by a joint presentation on the Save the Food campaign by Dana and Cece. We'll take questions at the end of each presentation, so please type your questions into the question box as we go through the presentations. I would now like to introduce Ashley Zanoli, who joins us from her temporary assignment with the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. Ashley, we will turn the webinar controls over to you to introduce today's topic.
Great, thanks Chris. I'm excited to be on the line today with so many people to help introduce a topic really near and dear to my heart, the topic of wasted food. And when I started working on wasted food at EPA with colleagues like Chris in 2010, I thought, how could these stats possibly be true? That 20 to 40% of food was going uneaten, yet 1 in 6 families in Washington State where I lived didn't have enough food to eat. The issue of wasted food has now garnered more attention thanks to trailblazers like Dana Gunders at the NRDC, who you'll hear from today, and thanks to leadership at the national level through public and private organizations like the US EPA and the hundreds of businesses participating in EPA's Food Recovery Challenge. And I'm here today just to paint a brief picture on the scope of our wasted food problem and why it's actually a huge opportunity for our economy, society, and the environment. And there are really no losers when it comes to ending wasted food and closing the meal gap in America. But it's going to come down to a fundamental shift in how we value food and people, and we all have a role to play. There are opportunities for food waste reduction across the food value chain, and tools exist to help both individuals and organizations reduce their footprint while capturing billions in wasted food and nutrients. So over the next 8 minutes, I'm going to share with you the scope of this food waste challenge, why it matters, and then turn it over to Dana and Cece to educate us all on what we can do about it through this really exciting national campaign. So for me, a picture always paints 1,000 words, and here you can see an example of what a family of 4 might waste over the course of a month. It turns out that 1/4 of all food purchased is never eaten, and most of us don't even realize we're wasting food due to reasons that Dana and Cece will discuss with you shortly. And not only is wasting food a waste of money, it's also a waste of resources and nutrients, since on a life cycle basis, producing, distributing, and actually consuming food accounts for 14% of domestic greenhouse gas emissions. Meanwhile, food waste is still the single largest and least recovered portion of the municipal solid waste stream. So given the amount of unnecessary food waste and the economic value associated with it, why is up to 40% of the food supply ultimately going uneaten, while 49 million Americans are food insecure? Well, we could talk about the nuances and root causes for days, but here are 4 global trends that really aren't doing us any favors when it comes to wasting food. The first is population growth, and here's a staggering statistic. The change in population between now and 2050 is equivalent to the global population of 1950. Another trend is that more single people and couples are living alone, and merchandising might still be set up for a family of 4. People are also spending more of their time and discretionary income traveling, which leaves a lot of folks less in control of portion sizes or how to manage leftovers. And lastly, the global urbanization trend has really pushed people further away from their food sources, and convenience and on-demand lifestyles tend to trump feeling bad about wasting food. And here's the kicker. The waste we see is just the tip of the iceberg. The true cost of waste is 8 to 10 times the cost of disposal, according to this 2009 study from the Institute of Preventive Medicine in Denmark. And this slide really illustrates why the ReFed study, this slide really illustrates why a study that recently came out called ReFed put a value associated of $5,000 per ton with unsold food compared to $100 per ton disposal fee. And the cost of food lies in what consumers don't see, because wasted food are largely the consequences of what's invisible to the public. And these are the costs of lost nutrients, unnecessary fertilizers and fuels on farms to grow food, the cost of lost energy and labor to harvest, process and package and transport food really far outweigh what we see, which is the visible cost of waste. And we can use this reality to really drive this collective shift in elevating the conversation, because humans really hate waste. Nobody likes waste, especially the farmers who work so hard to produce the nourishment that gets to your plate. And here's how we can have a better idea of where food waste is occurring and what's ultimately being wasted, thanks to a group of impact investors that set up this report called ReFed, where they work to rethink food waste through economics and data. And I had the privilege of serving on this advisory committee with about 30 businesses and foundations, as well as NGOs and government leaders who are really committed to reducing wasted food. And through this report, the consultants analyzed the best available data across the food supply chain, which is actually rather limited, but they found that about 1.3% of our gross domestic product is being spent on growing, processing, and transporting that food that's ultimately being disposed of and never eaten. About 80% of that food waste is coming from households and consumer-facing businesses, including retailers and food service providers, ranging from corporate and school cafeterias to restaurants. And consumers are ultimately paying the highest price for wasted food due to the difference in retail versus wholesale pricing. Of the foods being wasted across the supply chain from farm to fork, nearly 80% of that wasted food is happening at the retail and consumer level, and it's predominantly coming from perishable food. Like fruit and vegetables, which according to this report seem to account for about 40% of total waste. Sorry, my slides actually got reversed there. But as we just showed you previously, that wasted food's really just the tip of the iceberg when we think about disposal. And in order to solve this wasted food problem, like any great systemic challenge, there really is no silver bullet. But EPA's food recovery hierarchy really lays out this aspirational path to putting food to its best and highest use by, first off, just not wasting it in the first place. So here, an ounce of prevention really is worth a pound of cure, and it's been the most effective way, most cost-effective way to reduce wasted food by, for example, measuring prep and plate waste to shift purchasing and overproduction patterns, which in the case of that recent ReFed study claims that up to $2 billion in annual business profit could be achieved through practices related to source reduction. There was also an Intel case study that EPA Region 10 supported about a decade ago where that corporate kitchen was able to have wasted food. Over the next 2 years, I'm actually helping the state of Oregon develop and implement the first statewide food waste prevention strategy in the U.S. So stay tuned for new prevention strategies from EPA and Oregon DEQ, as well as other case studies. The next strategy is really to feed people instead of landfills. So solving hunger isn't quite as simple as closing the meal gap, but it's a huge start. And it makes a lot of sense to redistribute wholesome excess food that's unsold to feed people in need. The next best use after that's really feeding food that was grown to feed people to animals, which can significantly reduce the environmental and financial footprint of farming operations. In Europe, they tend to call these first three portions of the waste hierarchy waste avoidance. And the next tiers really cover the best solutions to manage food waste that's unavoidable so we can recover nutrients and energy. So moving down, there's industrial applications like turning waste grease to biodiesel and ways to create energy by recycling nutrients that also generate energy through technologies like anaerobic digesters. And farmers in cities can ultimately work to generate energy while putting nutrients back into soils. Nutrients from food waste can also be directly recycled without energy generation through composting, be it distributed or backyard composting or commercial, and really reduce the millions of dollars that municipalities spend on landfilling food scraps and instead feed our soils. And landfilling and incineration are really the last resort options when it comes to wasted food. So this hierarchy really represents how to best reduce, reuse, and recycle food so it's ultimately never wasted. And it's important to note that while putting food in a landfill where it generates methane gas is a pretty bad thing, the environmental impacts of producing the food in the first place is typically 10 to 30 times higher. So prevention can be really key from a cost-effective and environmental benefit standpoint. And it turns out we all have a role to play because our food really is too good to waste. And here are some key consumer behaviors that can lead to wasting less that are really nothing new. These are behaviors that were advertised through campaigns during World War I, but we can all still eat well, toss less, simplify our lives, and save money by making these small shifts in how we shop, prepare, and store our food. And along those lines of those key waste prevention behaviors from World War I, they're not all that different from the key waste prevention behaviors that are identified in a new national EPA toolkit known as Food Too Good to Waste. Yesterday, EPA Region 10 released an evaluation of this toolkit, which I helped design and test in 10 different states through campaigns that ran from October of 2012 through December of 2014. And the campaign focused on assisting households to make those small shifts in how they shop, prepare, and store food to prevent it from ultimately being wasted and to help save households money. And these key behaviors have been linked to up to 50% reductions in preventable wasted food from participating households. EPA is actually going to do a webinar on the toolkit in July. And these households and participating local governments that ran this campaign based on ways to minimize the barriers and maximize the benefits of adopting these key waste prevention behaviors found that it was pretty easy to implement and there were ways to drive measurable behavior change in communities. So you'll hear a lot more about how we can take actions in our own homes based on the new National Ad Council campaign that the NRDC helped develop. And the Food Too Good to Waste toolkit that EPA developed here really puts those actions into a local and social context to drive new community norms, and it's completely complementary to the awareness-raising Ad Council campaign you're about to hear from Dana and Cece. And if you're interested in accessing that toolkit and implementation guide, the link's here, and there's also a link to that evaluation that just came out yesterday. So I just want to really thank you for your time and the opportunity to introduce this topic to you, and I'm excited to hear about the Ad Council campaign, so turn it over to Dana.
Great. It's my pleasure. Thank you, Ashley. I appreciate that. And Dana, I was just going to introduce you, so go ahead.
Great. And while the slides are coming up here, thank you everyone so much for being here. I have to tell you that this campaign has actively been in the works for 16 months or so, and inactively been in the works for around 2 years, and in my head been in the works for probably about 5 years. So it's really a thrill to be kind of able to say it is here and introduce it to you all. So I just wanted to quickly give you a sense of what we're going to talk about today. We will spend just a couple minutes talking about why we decided to do this campaign. And then I will pass it to my colleague Cece at the Ad Council to really just talk about how who the Ad Council is and how their campaigns typically work. We'll then go through and share some of the insights from the research behind the campaign that we learned over the last year plus as we research kind of what messaging was really going to resonate with people. We'll then go through the actual campaign materials and show you everything that we have to date, and describe how you can participate and access all of the materials that we have, which are available for you to use and share. So in case you haven't heard, which I know you have because Ashley just told you, about 40% of the food is going uneaten in this country, and that's really the problem that we are trying to target. And when you sit back and start to dig into this problem, you often find yourself back at the challenge of the fact that we have this cultural acceptance out there for wasting food. Now, nobody wakes up in the morning saying they want to waste food that day, but they do tend to behave in ways that lead to wasted food, often as a byproduct of other actions and activities in their lives. And you know, we've sort of become fairly accepting of that practice. And so above all, with this campaign, we're really trying to change the cultural paradigm around that. There are other countries in the world where it's really not acceptable to waste food. I've told the story before of a woman from Hong Kong who once told me that when she was growing up, her aunts and uncles would inspect her bowl at the end of a meal and tell her that every grain of rice in her bowl would become a mole on the face of her future husband. You know, that is a, you know, there may be other issues there, but that's really a culture where wasting food is not accepted. And, you know, when we look back at our own culture, there are practices like littering, like smoking, that once were very acceptable, but largely through these large advertising campaigns have over time really become unacceptable. And that's really what we're trying to achieve with with this campaign. I can walk down the street, and if I throw half a sandwich on the sidewalk, people would think I'm crazy and not really tolerate that. But if I were to throw that same half sandwich in a garbage can, people would not think much of it. And we're really trying to bring a moment of awareness to what it means to be throwing that half sandwich out, and you know, how kind of acceptable that should be. So let's go to the next slide. There are really three, you know, beyond that sort of large cultural shift, we see three reasons to be targeting consumers on this issue. One, as Ashley mentioned, consumers actually turn out to be the largest share of wasted food in terms of the whole supply chain. So more is wasted at the consumer level collectively than in restaurants or grocery stores or further up on the supply chain on farms. So targeting them directly, we are trying to target that segment of the waste that's happening in their households. But beyond that, you know, the attitudes and that culture I just described really drive waste in the food industry as well. So, you know, in restaurants, there is a lot of pressure to serve large portions, for instance, because that's what consumers consider to be a good value. Grocery stores, there's a lot of pressure to offer a huge inventory at any moment of time, and that can lead to a lot of waste. And on farms, you know, they are impacted by some of the expectations around how products should look and how much shelf life they should have. So we hope that with this campaign, we'll also be kind of shifting the environment that those businesses are operating within and giving them some social license to do things differently in a way that would waste less in their own operations. And lastly, you know, it turns out that all these people out there who are doing innovative things, who are wanting to start startups, who work in the food industry, who plan events, who make policies, well, they also all turn out to be consumers as well and people. And I have found in my 5 years of working on this topic that when you reach people as people on this issue, you know, it really resonates with them, and they often tend to take it into their work or into their other spheres of influence, and there can be a ripple effect that can be very powerful. So those are really, I would say, the three driving reasons that we're doing this. And with that, I will pass it to Cece, who again will be describing how the Ad Council works, and then we'll dive into insights from the actual campaign and show you the campaign itself.
Perfect. Thank you, Dana. So before we jump into the actual campaign, I just wanted to give a quick overview of the Ad Council because we are sort of a unique organization in terms of what we do. So we really have 5 key things that sort of drive how we define ourselves. So the first is that we really tackle any urgent public issue that's out there. That's our goal, is to identify issues in society that we can change through advertising, and then create full advertising campaigns that address those issues. We've been around since 1942, and so we just celebrated our 75th anniversary last year. And really our campaigns, they vary between anything from education, educating people about how to stay financially literate and save for the future, to issues about family and community, to issues about health and safety. So on this slide here, I just shared a couple of examples of campaigns that we have on our docket, our adoption campaign, autism awareness, and then our recycling campaign. And we are the partner of choice for over 40 different nonprofits and government agencies. NRDC, who we partnered with on this campaign, that's a new partner to us, but we've been working with other organizations, for example, the Department of Transportation, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. We've worked with them since, I think, the 80s on our drunk driving work. So we really have long-term partnerships with the leading nonprofits and government organizations. And then one of the things that we're really proud of is that we work to always have breakthrough creative that we feel confident is going to change consumer mindsets. We have amazing agencies who work pro bono and donate their time and creative resources to all of these issues. And then in addition to that, we have a very rigorous creative review process that all of our campaigns undergo. So we have what we call our creative review committee, which is made up of leaders in the advertising industry, and they review all of our campaign creative before it goes out in market, and we kind of seek their stamp of approval before we put anything out there. Here's just a quick slide that shows some of our amazing agency partners. Sapient Nitro is our agency on this campaign, but we also work with other leaders, for example, BBDO, RGA, YNR, KBS. We also work with media agencies who supply planning expertise. So we have OMD, we work with Zenith, so we have some really great partnerships there. And then nothing would be possible if we didn't have great partners in the media. So across all of our 50-ish campaigns, we receive about $1.6 billion in donated media every single year. So that comes out to around 20 to 30 million per campaign. But if you think about that number, that's really, really incredible. And we have 33,000 different media outlets who we reach out to on a regular basis. Anyone from your TV outlets, CBS, Fox, NBC, to online networks, Google and Facebook and AOL. And we're constantly expanding. So every time a new media company comes out, we are working with them. And then lastly, we really work to make sure that we're analyzing all of our campaigns very thoroughly. So since we don't have, obviously, any results from our Save the Food campaign, I just wanted to share this slide that shows some results from our Adoption from Foster Care campaign. I would argue that this is the biggest ask that we have in terms of campaigns on our docket. Asking a family to actually adopt a child and take them into their house is one of the biggest things that we could expect of someone, but our campaign has been hugely successful. For this, you can see that we've had over 36 million visits to the website adoptuskids.org, 27,000 families registered to adopt, and ultimately 22,000 kids were adopted into permanent families. So that just shows some of the impact of our previous campaigns. And as we move forward with evaluating Save the Food, I have a slide later on that just gives a little bit more of a thorough framework for how we'll be looking at it, but it'll be a combination of donated media, looking at our website visits and website traffic, evaluating PR and social media placements, and also any social conversation that's happening on Facebook or on Twitter or on Instagram. And then we have our tracking study, which measures changes in awareness, attitudes, and behaviors over time. And then ultimately, we're obviously looking for changes in the amount of food waste. So we'll be looking to NRDC and our other partners for those sorts of data points. So this is just to sort of sum up our model. We work with agencies on a pro bono basis. We work with media companies who donate all of this media to our campaigns. We work with our nonprofit and government agencies. So in this case, NRDC is our issue expert and our sponsor, but all of you on the phone would be amazing partners as well, and we're hoping to get you engaged in this campaign so you can go back to your communities and spread the word. And then we can't forget about our corporations. We have amazing corporate partnerships, and we think a lot of the ideas and extensions of this campaign would be great for corporations to get involved as well. So that's my summary slide that's my summary on the Ad Council, and now we can jump into the Save the Food campaign. So I've mentioned this before, but this was a trilogy of partners. So we had NRDC as the issue expert, Sapient Nitro as our creative expert, and then Ad Council, and we're handling campaign from start to finish, including all of the distribution and analytics. I think we've sort of talked about this issue in depth, so I'm going to skip over this slide and come to this slide. So I know a lot of you on the phone are obviously very engrossed in this issue, and it's something that's near and dear to your hearts and a part of your everyday life. But the truth is that even though food waste is trending upwards amongst cultural elites, so millennials who might be talking about it, it's getting a little bit more pickup in the press, it's still a little known issue. And that's unfortunate because food plays such a key role in shaping our identities. It's key to everything we do. When we make plans with friends, we're usually going out to eat dinner together. When we meet with our family, we come together for family dinners and family barbecues. And so our relationship with food really defines our relationships in life. So if food is so important to us, why is so much food going to waste? And the truth is that people just aren't aware of this issue, and if you tell them, most people don't believe that they are actually the ones wasting food. So the goal of this campaign is to really provide that wake-up call to our consumers and educate them about the issue so that we can then disrupt their habits. The other thing that we want to do is give them tangible ways that they can actually create new habits. So as you'll see, all of our creative that we're going to share with you ultimately drives to a website, savethefood.com, where consumers can go to get more information about how they can change their behaviors on a daily basis to make an impact in the amount of food that they waste in their household. So I'll hand it over to Dana to talk a little bit about the research, and then we'll get into the creative.
Thanks, Cece. So there was an extensive amount of research behind this campaign, and as you can tell from just listening to Cece and seeing her slides, like, these guys are professionals, you know, and they used all of their professional prowess in order to develop this campaign. And so, gosh, apologies if there's background noise here. They really researched this. They looked at secondary research. They did their own interviews. We interviewed all sorts of experts on the topic. including people like the Cornell Food and Brand Lab and the people who run millennial food blogs and things like that. And then they did their own research. They actually went into people's homes and watched them unpack their groceries and looked in their refrigerators, watched them cook, interviewed them about their food habits and kind of why. And so really trying to dig into the roots behind what drives people to waste food and therefore what kind of messaging would resonate. Next slide, please. So and then the campaign, with the campaign we're targeting both moms and millennials. Now both of those are very common in the common targets for the food industry. Moms because they tend to be the food gatekeepers and they're always trying to kind of convince their kids to eat. There's a lot of waste with kids and they're also trying to be good role models for their kids, which is actually one of the most driving motivations for parents in not wasting food, is trying to be a good role model for their children. And then millennials, you know, they are the idealistic, they're socially minded, they're very engaged in digital, and so we feel like we can reach them. But they do tend to waste food because they're so busy with their social lives. And also that generation may not have the cooking skills that some older generations do. Next slide, please. So when kind of looking at the way food moves and our food management habits, there were some observations that were made as part of this research. One was that people are very aspirational when they're shopping. So we go to the store, we're thinking about our week ahead, we want to eat healthy, we want to feed our kids healthy food, and we buy all this stuff with those aspirations in mind. We want to cook, but then they don't always match the reality of our week or what we actually like to eat. In fact, there's something called a diversification bias where we think we actually want more variety in our diets than we actually do. And when it comes down to it, we tend to eat a lot of the same things. That's not always reflected in our shopping, where we are feeling in different mood and wanting to try new things. Next slide, please. Food storage. People don't necessarily stop to think about the best way to store their food. They don't always know the best way to store their food, and they don't always want to take the time to store their food properly. So between all of that, there's kind of this confusion, and people throw things in the fridge wherever, and ultimately that leads to a shorter shelf life for products, and there's generally that mindset of kind of when in doubt, throw it out, and people tend to be cautious with the food in their fridge when they're not sure if it's okay. Next slide, please. When people are cooking, we found what they call blind spots. You know, you might want to be cooking something good, but then all of a sudden you only have 20 minutes to get dinner on the table, or you're running out, and you don't necessarily, or you really want everyone to be happy, so you're cooking 3 different meals, and because of one of those forces, you wind up kind of with a challenging food management situation, right? Maybe you're not using the food you thought you're not cooking the meal you thought you'd be cooking, or you're cooking 3 meals, and that's a lot of inventory to manage well, both before the meal and after. Or you might just be cooking a lot, not really thinking about how much people are going to eat. So all of those are leading to waste, you know, sort of when people are cooking. And then lastly, and I find this just fascinating, we found that people are very uncomfortable when it comes to empty space in the kitchen, or when it comes to food and empty space. So, you know, white space is a very trendy thing when you walk into a building, you know, building design, or even in books and print design. There's a lot of talk about white space, but when it comes to food, we do not like white space. We do not feel, you know, an empty refrigerator, if you just look at that picture on the screen, makes us feel uncomfortable. A plate that's not full makes us feel uncomfortable. A shopping cart that's not full sort of calls to us to fill it. And so through all of that, we have this tendency to want to just put more food in places, even if it's more than we need or plan to eat. And here are some of the kind of motivations that we found in the research that were leading to people wasting food. And as you can see, these are all very positive motivations. We want to self-improve and eat better. We want to provide comfort to our family or to our guests. We want to be safe with our food, of course. We want to feel thoughtful. And those are things we're trying to express with food, and yet there's sort of this byproduct that goes with it, which is that some of the food gets wasted. Next slide, please. And so what we found is that underlying this campaign, the real strategy is to play off those positive intentions. People have really good intentions when it comes to food, and we don't want them to feel bad, but we do want to make them aware that there is this byproduct problem, which is wasting food, and we want to wake them up to that, and we want to get them on board that, along with those other positive intentions, to have the positive intention to not waste food. And so we've really tried with this campaign to keep the message positive, to make it something that people can get on board with and want to join. And through that, we came up with the platform of Save the Food. It's a little bit of a play on saving the whales, but you can also, save food as leftovers. The ad agency, Sapient Nitro, when they talked about it, they often say, we want to save everything else has rights, and we want to save all these other things, and yet food, which keeps us alive, we don't pay much attention to really saving or give it as much respect as it perhaps deserves. So those are some of the creative ideas behind the campaign. And with that, I will pass it to Cece, and we're going to show you all of the assets.
All right. So we're going to hope that this works, but if not, you are able to run if you go to savethefood.com, the spot will be just on the home page, and you can watch it there. But we're going to try to play it for you now. 1 second. And it looks like technology is failing us. Here we go. All right, so that is our spot. That is our 2-minute version, and what we love about it is that it really follows the strawberry, and it makes you the moment that you see the strawberry, you start to form this emotional connection with it, and that emotional connection really grows throughout the entire spot. And so it ends with that wasting food, waste everything line, which we think is really powerful. So this spot was directed by Martin Sterling, who is an award-winning director. He did a really famous piece for Save the Children, which you might have seen, but if not, you can Google it. But he worked on this campaign. There was a lot of passion coming from him. We also, I don't know if you recognize the track that was playing, but that was from the movie Up. And so Disney and the composer, Michael Giacchino, donated the track, the music track, to us. And so this spot really was a result of so many talented individuals in the advertising and film world coming together and rallying around this cause. So we're really proud of it, and this version is about 2 minutes. It will live mostly online. And then we also have 60 and 30-second versions, which you can find on the YouTube channel. And those 60 and 30-second versions will be distributed to television stations, or have been distributed to television stations across the U.S. So hopefully you'll be seeing them soon. And then just to give you a taste of the other creative that we have as a part of this campaign, we know that people are not just watching TV anymore. They are online, and they are browsing tons of websites. And so we've created these web banners that will start to pop up for you. We have a tomato execution, so you're seeing the growth of the tomato. It blossoms into this beautiful red tomato on the third frame. And then the disturbing stat that 40% of food in America is wasted pops up, and then it fades to a picture of these rotting tomatoes, and then it ultimately ends on the end frame. Cook it, store it, share it, savethefood.com. And so this is an animated banner, so it would just play through if you were to see it on a web page. We also have these pre-roll executions, and pre-roll, for those of you who are not aware, they're the videos that run online before other videos that you're hoping to watch. So for example, when you're on YouTube and sometimes an ad will pop up, that is pre-roll space, and so that is where something like this might run. This is also an actual video file, but I just included some screenshots here for you. So here we're watching the growth of the strawberry, and then again, similar to the web banner, the statistic of 40% of food in America is wasted, that comes up, and then it transitions into this image of the rotting strawberries, and then we go to the end frame: cook it, store it, share it, just don't waste it, savethefood.com. And so you'll see those two taglines: cook it, store it, share it, just don't waste it, throughout a lot of our creative. In some cases, we cut out the just don't waste it line just to make sure that the creative worked for where it was being placed. We also have what we call out-of-home executions. So these are the billboards that you'll see on the side of the highway when you're driving, and they're the bus shelters that you see in cities. So we have 4 executions of these. The first is what we're calling the egg execution, and it has the line: trashing 1 egg wastes 55 gallons of water. Cook it, store it, share it, savethefood.com. And then it has our logos at the bottom. We've got our milk: 40% of food in America is wasted, the same tagline. And then on the milk carton it says best if used. And this would be the same placement: billboards and bus shelters. We've got our boneless, skinless chicken breast, which is also best if used. And then we have our stat that a family of 4 spends $1,500 a year on food they don't eat. Cook it, store it, share it, savethefood.com. And then finally, our bread: every American wastes 290 pounds of food a year. Cook it, store it, share it, savethefood.com. We also have these same 4 ads in print and poster format. So these are our print ads. Here we have, when you're flipping through a magazine, that's where something like this might run. We also have black and white versions that could run in newspapers. So we're hoping that you'll start seeing those soon. As we go through the rest of the presentation, we have some assets that, or we have a website where we're housing the different assets. So if you would like to download posters and print them for your offices or print them for school classrooms or whatever makes sense for you, we've included those print-ready files on the website. And then we have what we're calling our trash facts. And these are really interesting executions. So we thought that what better place to give people a message about all of the waste that they're causing than to put it on the waste containers. So here we have the stat: 55% of edible restaurant leftovers end up in here, and we have a big trash bin. We also have our trash can. This month you'll toss 20 pounds of food in the trash, savethefood.com. And then we have on our waste management or recycling trucks, the EPA estimates that food waste costs roughly $1.3 billion to dispose of in landfills, savethefood.com. So these are great ways and sort of non-traditional advertising techniques, but they really work with our message. And this is one of the places that we would love your help. This is a traditional advertising space that we can reach out and secure. And so if we are to execute any of these types of things, we would need your help in just securing this space on waste management trucks or on trash cans in your city. And we'd love to have this come to life and would love to work with any of you to make this happen. We also have what we're calling wild postings. And so these are some things that you might see as you're walking by a construction site. So it's a little bit more sort of disruptive, and it doesn't look as though it's formal advertising, and that's the whole point. We sort of want to shock people, and so we've got our best used print ads intermixed with different statistics that you've seen in this presentation, and then of course big posters spelling out Save the Food.
Cece, can I interrupt 1 second? It's Chris. I don't know if you've moved, but we're getting a little choppiness in your voice.
Oh, I haven't moved.
Okay.
Is this better?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Let me move the computer away. Maybe there's disruption from the computer. 1 second. Is that better at all?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. So, as I mentioned, all of our advertising directs to our website, savethefood.com. You can access this on your home computers now. This is live and ready for you to explore. But this is our homepage. We like that it's such a clean look and feel, and it's really synergistic with all of the creative. On the website, we have 2 different places right now where we offer additional information. We have tips, where we give people tips on how to actually start changing their own behaviors and saving food. And then we have a storage section where we give people advice and tips on how to store commonly wasted foods. And this is really what we call an evolving website. So this is what we have today, but if you visit us in a month, it's going to be different, and if you visit us in 2 months, it's going to be even more different. So we're constantly adding new information on here, and one of the things that we're working on next is implementing recipes so people can search for ingredients that might be going to waste and hopefully find a recipe that would match up with the food that they're looking to use. Here are some other screenshots from the website, but I encourage you to spend some time clicking around and sharing this with your consumer audiences. And then, as we mentioned at the beginning, this campaign launched on Wednesday of last week, so just over a week ago now, at the Food Tank Summit in Washington, D.C., and we launched to an enormous amount of press. We got great placements. This is just a screenshot of some of the placements that we've received. Adweek did an amazing story. National Geographic did a great story on us. Upworthy included a post about the campaign, and then we even had a YouTube celebrity tweet out about the campaign. So his name is Joey Christopher, and so that was really fantastic for reaching our millennial audience. And overall, the top 10 press hits alone resulted in a reach of about 31 million people. So that's just to give you a sense of how many people we reached just in the first week of launch, which is fantastic. And we're continuing to grow. So we have social pages, we have a Facebook page, we have Instagram, and we have Pinterest, and I'm going to give you information in a couple of slides about how you can access and like us or follow us or friend us or whatever you want to do. And then I'm also giving you a quick sneak peek because on the far left we have a BuzzFeed partnership that has not launched yet, but that will be launching in a couple of weeks, and we're really excited about this. It's part of a series that BuzzFeed has donated to us, and so this is really just the beginning of wonderful press and PR and social activity. So I'm sure a lot of you are interested in how we're going to evaluate the campaign, and we have a very thorough evaluation plan for this, where we look at sort of 4 key areas. We look at exposure of the campaign, audience awareness, engagement, and then ultimately impact. And each is really measured through different things. So for the exposure, we look at our donated media. So as I mentioned at the beginning, Ad Council campaigns as a whole receive about $1.6 billion a year in donated media. So that comes out to about $20 to $30 million per campaign. So we'll be measuring the media value for Save the Food specifically. We'll also be looking at how many impressions the campaign has gotten, the total reach, and the frequency at which people are seeing and hearing our ads. And then if you go down to the awareness box, the green box, we really measure PSA, so advertising and website recognition, through our continuous tracking study, and more on that next slide. But that's a study in which we talk to about 8,000 people per year and look at their ongoing changes in awareness, attitudes, and behaviors about this issue and about the campaign specifically. We also look at engagement, which is measured primarily through website traffic. So we use Google Analytics to monitor all of our traffic. We're looking at how many visits we're getting, how long people are spending on the site, how many pages they're visiting on the site, how quickly they're bouncing off. So all of those key baseline metrics. And then we're also looking at different site conversions. So right now we're looking at the visits to the tip page and how many visits we're getting to the store pages, as well as how many people are signing up to receive email alerts with for more information. And as I mentioned earlier, this website is changing, so as it changes, we will update our site conversions accordingly. We're also looking at how the campaign performs on social media, so how many people are sharing, liking, commenting, or otherwise interacting with the campaign through Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or Pinterest. And then ultimately, we're looking to make an impact. So we, again, through our continuous tracking study, are looking at a couple of key things: shifting perception that food waste is a big problem, increase the amount of people who say that they're searching for information and taking individual action steps more frequently. So here again is that continuous tracking study that I've mentioned a couple of times. This is an ongoing tracking study where we can measure ongoing shifts in awareness, attitudes, and behaviors around food waste. Again, the audience that we're reaching out to is totals about 8,000 people per year, 7,800 per year. And then the key metrics, we're looking at changes in a couple of areas. So we'd like to see them agree with relevant knowledge and attitudes. And the two questions that speak to that are wasting food is a big problem in the United States. And we would ask people how strongly they agree or disagree with that question, or that statement. And then the other statement, my individual actions would make a difference in reducing food waste. And then we'd also like to see an increase in desired behavior. So increase in those who have sought information about ways to waste less food, those who have regularly taken steps to reduce food waste, and then the frequency of the individual steps that they're taking. And so now we're at the section where we're asking you guys to help us spread the word. This slide just shows you how you can access our Spread the Word toolkit, or what we're calling our social toolkit. So if you go to savethefood.com and you scroll all the way to the bottom, you can see my little red arrow here is pointing to Spread the Food, Spread the Word. So click on that and you'll be taken to this site. And a couple of the key actions that we're hoping that you'll take with us are learning a little bit more about the campaign. So we have a campaign background tab where we included our campaign fact sheet as well as some frequently asked questions just to give everyone a little bit more information. We also have our campaign assets tab, and we would love if you could view or share or embed the creative in presentations. So for example, here you have our YouTube video. If you click at that, if you click on the arrow at the top right of the video, it gives you options for how to share it, whether it's via email or whether it's embedding or sharing on social media. So we'd love anything like any activity like that. I mentioned this previously, but we've also made posters available for you. Those can also be found on the Campaign Assets tab. And for this, we would love if you want to print those posters for stores or your offices or schools, educational purposes, whatever it may be. The ads are there for you to do that. Everyone, the way that so much information spreads nowadays is obviously via social media. Our dream would be for this campaign to go viral, and so to that end, if there's anything you can do to help support the campaign via Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, we have pre-canned tweets and posts for you to do so. So those are also housed on this toolkit. And then for those of you who have relationships with the media, who, let's say, your neighbor happens to work for CBS and you'd love to see the TV spot on their local station, we have tools for you to access the PSAs. We have a sample PSA director letter that you can help share out to your neighbors so that they would understand why this campaign is so important and why they should run it on air. One important thing to note is that all of our assets run in space that is donated by the media. There may be some opportunities to co-brand assets and air them in paid space, but those are sort of on an approval basis. And so for anything that you would like to do or we haven't covered here, you can contact savethefood@nrdc.org, and we'll work with you to figure out how we can make something happen. So just to sum up these slides into kind of the key areas for or the key items you can do to get involved through this social media toolkit. And again, the link is a little long, so it's probably easier to access through the website. But you can join the Save the Food community. We have our links to our Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and Instagram communities there. You can run the PSAs on TV monitors in your workplace or at other public buildings, schools, etc. You can reach out to your local TV and print media to encourage them to donate advertising space for the campaign. And you can print posters to put in your offices, stores, newsletters, or any other owned space. And then just to sum up I know we shared some of those trash facts earlier and some other exciting outdoor materials. So if you're a local government or waste management official or have relationships with either of those people and would like to look into either donating your owned advertising space, for example, if you own space on a bus or on a metro line and you'd like to run the Save the Food work, please contact us with those requests. If you'd like to run the stencil campaign, so those were the trash facts that were printed on dumpsters and on waste management trucks, we can work with you to make that happen. We'd love to see that come to life. And so these are some of the ways that we would love you to get involved. There's more. This campaign is new and it's constantly evolving. So stay tuned for more, and also reach out if there's anything that we haven't covered, and we'll do our best to accommodate any special requests. So I think that sums up everything. Dana, is there anything you want to say before we go into questions?
Yeah, thank you, Cece, for all of that. Just a few quick clarifications I wanted to mention. One is that the whole guerrilla tactics stencil campaign, we've been playing around with the best way to execute that. So at this point, we are open to doing it via kind of an actual stencil and spray paint, or potentially could just provide like a sticker that would look like spray paint, because we did get some feedback that perhaps spray painting might not be welcome in all places. So I just want to note that stickers could be available that would sort of look like they were spray painted. Also, on the wild postings that you saw in those construction sites, also just wanted to note that though they look like they are just posted up there by somebody in the middle of the night, actually we would do that through permitting, and there's actual agencies that go out and put those up, and they get permits and all of that. So just wanted to make that clear as well.
Yes, there's nothing illegal.
Right. And also, just I want to stress the fact that this is just the beginning. As Cece said, we're going to have a whole recipe section going up on our website. We're talking to a variety of different partners on ways to get things up in social and have chefs involved and other potential celebrities and all sorts of things like that. The Ad Council has amazing reach. As you can tell, they're total professionals, and even if you didn't understand or weren't familiar with half of the agencies and websites and everything that Cece mentioned, don't worry. I mean, the good news is that they know how to get this out through those sort of traditional media channels. We can certainly use any help we can get, but they're really talented in that regard. And where we really need your help is in your own communities and in the places where you have influence and you feel like you can reach. This is only a campaign if we make it one. We've provided the assets, but we really want everyone to kind of feel like they are theirs to use and share as much as possible. And so that's why we're doing this webinar, and we want all of your help. And I just also want to mention that following this webinar, there will be an evaluation. And sort of in the same vein that this is just the beginning, we are still thinking about what other templates and expressions of the campaign would be useful to get out there. So if you're sitting there thinking, gosh, I really want a mailer to send out with the waste bills that I send out, for instance, or I really want to be able to print Save the Food on binders or pencils or something. If there are particular uses that you could see for this campaign, but we don't have those assets available yet, we really want to hear about those. No promises, of course, but we do want to hear, because we want to know. One thing we've been playing around with is, could we make a doggy bag that different restaurants could use or something like that. So we're trying to get creative. We're trying to think about all different places where the campaign could be useful, and we really want to hear from you on that. So there's two ways that you can tell us about that. One is there will be an evaluation question that gets sent out as part of the evaluation for this webinar, and there will be a place to give us some feedback on that there. And the other is, again, to email us at the website, and perhaps somebody can put this in the chat box for us, savethefood@nrdc.org. And that's the email to use if you're interested in seeing different assets come forward. If you want to approach the media in your community or have media space or any of that, have any questions, we really want to enable the use of this campaign. So please don't hesitate to email us at savethefood@nrdc.org. So I think that's it, and we would love to hear your questions and reactions. I'll turn it over to Chris in case there's any other closing.
Great. So we have a slew of questions. We'll get to as many as we can. First off, amazing work and so excited to see this. So thank you so much for sharing, considering you've just released it a week ago. We're happy to be one of your first to get it out to our audience. So thank you. Just a kind of a generic question first. I don't know enough about the campaigns, but does it have a lifespan? Is it for a certain period of time, CC, or how does that work?
So this is an ongoing campaign. We're going to be out in market for at least 2 years, and hopefully beyond that. A lot of our most successful campaigns are ones where we've had long-standing relationships and been out in the market for a long time. Awareness and changing ingrained consumer behaviors doesn't happen overnight, and so really the first step is to raise awareness and then ultimately work to change those attitudes and behaviors. But it is a longer-term proposition, and so therefore we are going to be out in market for more than just a year.
Great, thank you so much. Another kind of generic question before we get into the specifics. Everything in English, will it be in other languages?
We started with English, and there's talk about doing Spanish in the future, so more to come on that.
Great. Great. A lot of questions, as you know, our audience is a lot of local folks, and a lot of questions about, can you manipulate the PDFs to add other folks' logos? How can you add it to the website? Can you just go over some of that a little bit more towards the municipal side?
Sure. I think, so in terms of adding your logos, we are open to co-branding, having your logo added to it. That's not a problem. We would ask that as much as possible, keep the creative the same so that we're not, so that we're keeping a consistent look and feel, and so that consumers who are being touched by this campaign all recognize that it's part of the same effort. But yes, you can feel free to add your logo, and the files that we've provided should enable you to do so.
Great. We've had a lot of questions about that, so that is a great answer, and appreciate your openness. A lot of questions too, maybe you just didn't mention it, is there any radio associated with this?
So we actually did a thorough media analysis of our target before we started creating assets for this campaign, and what we found is that TV and online and print, and then obviously out of home, they really are the key media elements that this audience is consuming. However, online radio is still a big piece of the media that this audience consumes, so we are talking about doing radio spots as we move into what we call phase 2. I know it's sort of funny because we just launched, but we're really rolling straight into phase 2 and continuing to create new assets. So yes, radio is on the horizon as well.
Great, thank you so much. We had one comment, love the trash facts. Curious if you have any haulers or waste management companies talking to you about using them on their containers and trucks.
We don't yet have this going. So that's what we're hoping to get out of this webinar, is to find partners who are willing to implement this with us. We love the idea, but again, it's not traditional media space that we could reach out to our media partners for. So that's where we're really looking for your help, and would love to chat with anyone who has those abilities and is open to doing so.
Great. Dana, a couple questions for you, kind of backing up to the research, or maybe even this is for you, Cece. So Cece, you're not in our world of waste. Did you work with your folks when you did the interviews to different families and others? Did the actual Ad Council people ever kind of take the challenge to see what you waste in your own home?
So it is funny. All of us who work on this campaign or who have touched this campaign talk about the different things that we've now changed in our lives. So I'll be honest, this issue was not on my horizon until I started working on this, and ever since working on it, I've made daily changes in how I freeze my food and how I preserve my food, and even when we're out shopping, my fiance, he'll want to get something, and I'm more strict about whether we're going to get it or not because, which I don't want to buy things that I think might go to waste. So it has impacted everyone who has touched this campaign significantly, and across the board, you'll hear everyone say that they've changed their behaviors.
That's great, because you're not our choir, so that's great to hear. Dina, on some of the research, can you talk a little bit about differences between here and the UK or other European countries or other countries in general? You used Hong Kong earlier.
We did not analyze that specifically, so it's a great question that I'm just trying to think through right now. I think, I think probably a lot of the core behaviors are pretty similar to the UK. The lack of knowledge around storing food, being aspirational in the store, wanting to feed people healthy. I mean, I do think those cross over the pond. I think, one difference is we just have bigger spaces to fill. When you think about that whole, filling your refrigerator, in Europe they have smaller refrigerators and they drive smaller cars, and I think they don't, just the volumes are a little bit different. They serve smaller portions. So I think there is a difference. It didn't necessarily come up in our research. But I didn't mention, for those who are not familiar, there is a similar campaign in the UK called Love Food, Hate Waste, and they found that over 5 years, between 2007 and 2012, running that campaign achieved a reduction in household food waste in the parts that could be avoided of about 21%. Now that was over the same period when there was a recession, but they still attribute, I think it's about about a half of that reduction to the campaign itself.
Great. And that gets back into the metrics. We had a bunch of questions on how you measure the campaign when your slide came up with the adoption an example. So can you just go over again how you're going to measure the campaign, or?
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to go back to the slide. Give me 1 second so that we can show you that evaluation framework one more time.
Sure. And while you're doing,
I'll just say that many of you may be able to imagine that it's really difficult to measure on-the-ground impact on this topic. Measuring, it involves digging through people's garbage cans, and you're always dealing with very small samples relative to the larger population. So trying to measure the on-the-ground impact of this campaign is challenging, and we're hoping to structure some pilots where we will be able to do that, but it's not kind of in the campaign plan right now. It's quite expensive. But we are trying to, short of digging through everyone's garbage cans, evaluate as best we can, and CCL has a few for the details.
Yeah, so for the media portion of the campaign, we are looking at exposure, and that would be how much donated media we're getting. So how many times is our TV ad running? How many billboards are up on the side of highways? And how many people are we reaching through those different creative mediums? Then we're looking at awareness amongst our consumer, both about the campaign and about the website. And this is something that we would measure through our ongoing tracking study where we're talking to consumers and moms and millennials. And we're looking at engagement. Engagement, what we mean by that is website traffic through Google Analytics, traffic to the site, time on site, different conversions on the site. Also, as part of the engagement metric, we're looking at social conversation and how that's changing, and then also social interactions, so how many likes and comments and shares and interactions we're getting through our Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Pinterest channels. And then ultimately impact, so again, looking to the consumer or the continuous tracking survey to show us shifts in consumers' attitudes and behaviors as they relate to food waste. And that obviously would be coupled by whatever on-the-ground data that we can get about the overall impact on food waste.
Great. You know, as I'm reading through the questions, and I'll share them all with you later, there's a lot of folks wanting to have a partnership. So can you talk a little bit about reaching out to retailers for a partnership? We talked a little bit about the waste haulers, but how about the retail sector, i.e. Starbucks, for example?
Sure. Dana, do you want to take that or do you want me to?
Yeah, we absolutely would love to partner with retailers and any food manufacturers and brands. There's ways that's happened in for other ad council campaigns. You know, what you've seen so far, I would say, is what it took to set up the framework for this campaign. From here on out, we really want to be able to get very creative in how it gets out there and sort of what modalities and, you know, different ways that we can partner. So I would say absolutely, we are going to be reaching out, you know, specifically to the retailers and manufacturers who are part of the Food Waste Reduction Alliance to help so that they can help us generate ideas on what might be useful for them. But I don't want to limit it to that by any means. If you are someone in the industry who's interested in partnering, please get in touch via that Save the Food website, and we'll get back to you real soon.
Great. I have another partnership question for you from Canada. How about partnering over the border?
So in terms of where we are able to distribute our campaign, we only have media relationships with the U.S. Media companies, and really the way that donated media works is different in every country, and so Ad Council as a whole only has domestic campaigns and can only distribute to the media. That being said, I don't think that there's any reason why the posters and the website wouldn't be extremely relevant for Canadian consumers, and so would love for you to share them. We don't have the media relationships to distribute outside of the U.S.
Great. Thank you. Getting back to partnerships, have you heard some concerns, you know, and I've heard this myself, from the grocery world, for example, that you're trying to get folks not to buy food, and that's going to impact their sales?
Surprisingly, I have really not heard that concern. The best group I have to reference is the Food Waste Reduction Alliance, and there's a number of the largest retailers that are part of that. You know, Kroger, Safeway, Publix, and you know, my sense is that they feel like consumers are a big part of this puzzle, both because they're wasting a lot of food in their homes, but also, again, because of this, like the expectations that they're bringing to the stores, and so and that consumers are not getting great value out of their food if they're not using it all, and they may not come back again to buy, you know, strawberries if every time they buy strawberries a third of them get moldy and go to waste. So you want to, and also that they are trying to build a relationship with their consumers and brand loyalty and all of that. So I think between those, I have seen an interest in really trying to be a helpful partner to consumers in having them waste less food, and that in the long run, that's really a more valuable strategy than being concerned that people might buy a little bit less.
And I have to echo that exactly, Dana. That's exactly what we've seen with some of the work we've done here in New England with our grocery chains, Hannaford, Stop and Shop, same thing. And they're looking for messages to share with their customers that resonate. So I think the campaign fits nicely, and I couldn't concur with your sentiments more. We are getting close to the end, so I have a couple more questions as we wrap down. Did you target certain sectors, or do you plan to target certain sectors or certain partnerships? And if so, could you list them? Colleges and universities, retailers? Thanks.
So we're really open to whoever wants to take this campaign and run with it. What the Ad Council does is we have our relationships with the media companies, and then we'll do everything to get the word out there for them and secure donated media support and media partnerships on behalf of the campaign. But anything that we can do on the ground through schools, through grocery stores, through other retailers, we are open and ready to do anything like that, because those are, you know, networks that we're not reaching through our traditional advertising efforts. So would love to work with anyone to get it out there.
Yeah, and I would just add, you know, the average Ad Council campaign gets between $20 and $30 million of donated media per year, but some of their campaigns are much more than that, more than double that. And in my mind, the difference between, you know, sort of being one of the 20 campaigns that they have running every year versus, you know, really getting out there and into the public fabric and is the reason we're here today talking to you all, and that is that, you know, all of these other channels are going to be really crucial to getting the word out. So we didn't target specifically anyone yet. Again, you know, we were just trying to kind of come up with that basic framework that could then be customized for different needs. And I think now, you know, we're in phase 2, there will be a phase 3, and that's where we're hoping to customize things a little bit more.
Great. I love the fact that you're in phase 2 1 week after your launch. Obviously, you don't work for a federal agency. So with that, I'd like to give everybody a minute or two to wrap up. Oh, we were going to do a polling question, and I completely forgot about that. So let's do the polling question before we close and wrap up. The point of the polling question was to see, for those of you on the webinar today, how or what you thought were valuable, and what you might use. So maybe we're on target with our ask, maybe not. So please take our panel, how would you use this campaign? Please take the question, and we'll report out the answers. And while we're doing that, let's do our wrap up, and we'll start with Ashley, and then we'll go back to the poll after Ashley.
Sorry, I think I was on mute. Hi, Chris. So I guess in closing, I just want to thank Dana and Cece for the amazing work they're doing through the Ad Council. You know, EPA's Food to Good to Waste toolkit was just a drop in the bucket compared to what they've been able to accomplish with a lot of professionals in the industry. So I think this webinar has given me a lot of personal food for thought, and hopefully all of you on the line, about ways we can take actions in our own homes and really leverage this campaign in bigger ways in our community.
Great. Well, here you go. And I think this hits on your analysis, Cece. Social media seems to be the hottest topic.
Let's get it viral.
Cece, why don't you give us your closing thoughts as well?
Sure. I would just say that this, more than other campaigns that I've worked on in the past, the excitement for this has been so tangible. It's come through so strongly in everyone who's donated their time and resources, from the director to the agency to Disney and the composer of Up. This is an issue that everyone wants to rally around, and it's not a hard ask. We're just really needing to educate consumers that there are very simple things that they can do. And so I think we have a lot going for us, and I think, you know, however many people were on the webinar today, if all of us can share it and get involved in some way, we're able to make a huge impact on this issue. So this is just the start, and we're really excited to see where it goes.
Great. Dana?
Yeah, well, I wanted to earlier mention a little tidbit about myself, which is that I have a young baby and a mother-in-law. And between those two things, I wind up, you know, in my own particular situation of trying to introduce new foods and having some be extra or like thrown across the floor. I have a mother-in-law who brings food unexpectedly all the time, which really wreaks havoc on my own personal food management approach. And I mention that because I think everyone is really in their own personal situation when it comes to how they manage their food and why it winds up going to waste. So, you know, with this campaign, we are trying to, you know, give some ideas and tips around cooking and storing. But I think just getting this message out, you know, what I've noticed more than anything, as Cece said, is when people encounter this issue and realize how much waste is really happening, they do make changes in their own lives, and they make them to fit their own lives. And just getting that awareness out there is going to make a difference. And so I just wanted to kind of close by saying that we're thrilled to have so many people join the webinar today. We're thrilled to have so much interest in the campaign, and the more you can do to just get the word out, the further it will get. So thanks to you all.
Well, we had a record number of participants today, so thank you all for joining us. I hope you get a lot of information and questions at savethefood@nrdc.org, which is in your chat box. The webinar will also be recorded and posted in 2 weeks, and please share it with your networks. We would wish to thank Ashley and Cece and Dana for their work on building awareness on the issue of wasted food, and we look forward to seeing more of the campaign, Phase 2, Phase 3. Note that EPA's Food Too Good to Waste Toolkit will be featured on our July webinar. And finally, most of all, we want to thank you for joining this month's SMM Web Academy, and we hope you continue to join us. Please make sure you complete your evaluation and give us your feedback, how we can meet your needs and how NRDC and the Ad Council can work with you. That concludes today's session. Thank you very much.